The financing of global terrorism, Iran. In the pursuit of global harmony among the world's nations, it is crucial to consider the role of Iran. This nation, often described as the great fundamentalist octopus, wields significant influence through its financial resources, which fuel terrorism and its proxies. The complete destruction of Iran may not be feasible, but addressing the issue realistically is imperative. In this chapter, we will examine the main problem with Iran, potential solutions, and how a unified coalition, particularly a tricontinental multinational army, can confront and dismantle its power. Procrastination in dealing with Iran only serves to strengthen its position, making immediate action essential. The problem with Iran. Iran's extensive influence in the region and beyond stems from its substantial financial resources and ideological drive. It supports various terrorist organizations and proxies, destabilizing regions and posing a significant threat to global security. This multifaceted threat includes conventional military power, asymmetric warfare, and cyber capabilities, making Iran a formidable adversary. Potential solutions. Addressing the Iranian threat requires a multifaceted approach. 1. Economic sanctions. Strengthening economic sanctions can cripple Iran's ability to finance its terrorist activities. Targeted sanctions on key sectors and individuals can significantly reduce the regime's operational capabilities. 2. Diplomatic isolation. Diplomatic efforts should aim to isolate Iran on the global stage. Building a broad international consensus against Iran's actions can limit its influence and put pressure on the regime to change its behavior. 3. Support for opposition. Supporting legitimate opposition groups within Iran can help create internal pressure for change. Providing resources and training to these groups can empower them to challenge the regime's authority. 4. Cyber warfare. Enhancing cyber capabilities to disrupt Iran's digital infrastructure can impede its ability to conduct cyber attacks and manage its internal and external communications. The role of a unified coalition. A tricontinental multinational army, comprising forces from multiple continents, can play a pivotal role in countering Iran's influence. This coalition can operate on various fronts. 1. Military deterrence. Establishing a credible military threat can deter Iran from aggressive actions. Joint military exercises and strategic deployments can showcase the coalition's readiness to respond to any provocation. 2. Intelligence sharing. Enhanced intelligence sharing among coalition members can improve the identification and neutralization of Iran's proxy networks. Coordinated efforts can disrupt supply chains and communication networks critical to these proxies. 3. Humanitarian efforts. Supporting humanitarian initiatives in regions affected by Iran's actions can undermine its influence. Providing aid and rebuilding infrastructure can win the hearts and minds of local populations, reducing their reliance on Iranian support. Conclusion. The global community cannot afford to delay action against Iran. The longer the world procrastinates, the more entrenched Iran becomes in its position of influence. A unified, tricontinental coalition is essential to effectively counter Iran's threat. By combining economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, support for opposition groups, and advanced cyber warfare, the coalition can weaken Iran's grip and pave the way for a more stable and secure global environment. Immediate decisive action is necessary to confront and mitigate the Iranian threat effectively. The necessity of internal revolution in Iran. To understand the societal dynamics that lead a population to support terrorism, finance it, and lead it, one must critically examine Iran. It is perplexing to see an entire nation align itself with such destructive objectives. The pertinent question is, why does the Iranian populace accept this? Why hasn't there been a second revolution to restore Iran to its former glory? Historically, Iran maintained amicable relations with the world. However, the revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini drastically altered its social and political landscape. This revolution succeeded in deeply embedding a radical ideology within the nation, fundamentally disrupting its social structure. For Iran to achieve lasting change, a civil revolution must emerge from within, similar to the uprisings that toppled leaders like Gaddafi and Hussein. This internal movement must aim to dismantle the entrenched religious fundamentalism and restore a more balanced and progressive governance. The role of the Iranian people. The Iranian people have the potential to initiate significant change. Historically, revolutions have been catalyzed by widespread dissatisfaction and the desire for a better future. The Iranian populace, witnessing the detrimental effects of the current regime's policies, could be galvanized into action. Steps toward revolution. 1. Building awareness. Educating the populace about the benefits of a secular and progressive society can foster a collective desire for change. 2. Organizing peaceful protests. Nonviolent protests can demonstrate the people's demand for change and attract international support. 3. Engaging the international community. Garnering support from global powers can provide the necessary resources and legitimacy to the movement. 4. Forming a unified front. A coalition of opposition groups can present a cohesive alternative to the current regime. Learning from history. The downfall of Gaddafi and Hussein illustrates that entrenched regimes can be dismantled through persistent and organized efforts. The Iranian Revolution must adopt a similar approach, targeting the core of the religious fundamentalist ideology that has dominated for decades. The vision for a new Iran. A successful revolution in Iran would pave the way for a society that values human rights, embraces modernity, and fosters peaceful international relations. This transformation would not only benefit Iran, but also contribute to global stability. Adversary. Conclusion. The Iranian populace has the power to reshape their nation's future. By rejecting the fundamentalist ideology that has caused immense suffering and isolation, and by embracing a progressive, secular governance model, Iran can reclaim its place as a respected member of the global community. The time for a second revolution is now, and it must be driven by the people, for the people. The global perception and responsibility towards Iran. The question arises, how can the citizens of Iran continue to support a regime that so clearly harms their own interests and endangers their standing in the international community? Do they not realize that the leadership's actions are isolating them and painting a target on their backs? It is essential to understand the internal and external dynamics at play. Internal perception and awareness. It appears that the citizens of Iran may be either unaware of the full extent of the regime's impact or feel powerless to effect change. Years of state propaganda, censorship, and repression have likely contributed to a climate of fear and misinformation. The leadership has successfully cultivated an image of resistance against external enemies, deflecting attention from its domestic failures. The need for global action. The international community recognizes the threat posed by Iran's current regime, particularly its support for terrorist organizations and its destabilizing influence in the region. Countries like Israel, the United States, the United Kingdom, and other reformed nations understand that a coordinated effort is necessary to neutralize this threat. However, the question remains, what are they waiting for? Strategic measures. According to ancient wisdom, by trickery you shall make war. This principle suggests that defeating an adversary often requires strategic and unconventional methods, rather than direct confrontation alone. To effectively address the threat posed by Iran, the following steps should be considered. 1. Economic sanctions. Intensify economic sanctions to cripple the regime's ability to fund terrorist organizations. By targeting key economic sectors, the international community can limit Iran's resources and weaken its global influence. 2. Covert operations. Implement covert operations to disrupt Iran's strategic capabilities. This could include cyber attacks on critical infrastructure and intelligence operations aimed at dismantling terrorist networks. 3. Diplomatic isolation. Strengthen diplomatic efforts to isolate Iran on the global stage. By forming a united front, reformed nations can pressure Iran into compliance with international norms and reduce its ability to find allies. 4. Support for internal opposition. Provide support to opposition groups within Iran. By empowering voices of dissent and offering tangible support, the international community can help catalyze internal change. 5. Public awareness campaigns. Launch campaigns to raise awareness among the Iranian populace about the true nature of their leadership's actions. This can help erode the regime's control over public perception and inspire grassroots movements. A call to action. The time for decisive action is now. The world cannot afford to wait any longer while Iran continues to pose a significant threat. By employing a combination of economic, covert, diplomatic, and informational strategies, the international community can effectively counter the Iranian regime's influence and promote stability. Conclusion. The citizens of Iran deserve a future free from the tyranny of a regime that endangers their well-being and tarnishes their international reputation. The international community must rise to the occasion, utilizing all available means to ensure that Iran is held accountable and that its capacity to support terrorism is thoroughly dismantled. Only through such comprehensive and coordinated efforts can lasting peace and security be achieved. The motivation behind supporting a regime that endorses terrorism. It is perplexing to understand what motivates individuals to support a government that openly supports terrorism. How can a populace remain passive in the face of a regime whose sole purpose seems to be to antagonize Western countries and train fundamentalist terrorist organizations? What price does such a society pay for supporting these leaders? Psychological and socio-political factors. The reasons behind this phenomenon are multifaceted. Psychological manipulation through state propaganda plays a significant role in shaping public perception. Years of indoctrination can instill a deep-seated belief in the regime's rhetoric, portraying itself as a defender against external threats. Fear and repression also inhibit dissent, making it perilous for citizens to voice opposition. The role of nationalism and religion. Nationalism and religious fervor are powerful tools that regimes use to garner support. By framing their actions as a holy war or a fight for national pride, governments can rally people behind them, even when those actions contradict the populace's long-term interests. This is particularly evident in Iran, where the regime leverages religious ideology to justify its policies and actions. Economic dependency. Economic factors also play a critical role. A significant portion of the population may be economically dependent on the regime, making them reluctant to oppose it. Jobs, subsidies, and social services tied to the government can create a sense of loyalty or at least compliance among the populace. The cost of compliance. The cost of supporting such a regime is high. International sanctions, economic isolation, and internal repression result in widespread poverty and lack of opportunities. The focus on military and terrorist activities diverts resources away from essential services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Moreover, the constant state of conflict and hostility damages the country's international relations, further isolating it and exacerbating its internal problems. Potential for change. Despite the daunting challenges, change is possible. The truth is simple. The actions of individuals can make a difference. An ordinary citizen in Iran holds the potential to change reality. The Iranian people do not have to suffer under a regime that prioritizes harming Western countries and promoting violence over their well-being. The call for internal revolution. There is no justification for supporting a regime whose only mission is to inflict harm. The Iranian populace has the power to initiate a second revolution, similar to those that have toppled tyrants like Gaddafi and Hussein. By rising against their government, the people can dismantle the fundamentalist, extremist ideologies that have plagued their country. Global perception and responsibility. The global community also bears responsibility. The world looks to nations like Israel, the United States, Britain, and other reformed countries to lead the way in combating this threat. The Iranian regime's characterization of Israel as the Little Satan and the United States as the Great Satan exemplifies a dangerous worldview that jeopardizes global stability. This perception endangers the quest for peace, prosperity, and harmonious coexistence. Conclusion. The motivation behind supporting a regime that endorses terrorism is complex, rooted in psychological manipulation, nationalism, economic dependency, and fear. However, the costs of such support are immense, leading to economic hardship, international isolation, and internal repression. The Iranian people have the power to change their reality by rejecting the regime's destructive policies. The global community must also take decisive action to support these efforts and ensure a safer, more stable world.